you, Dr. Hester, and thank you, Commissioner Chen. If I could ask if you wouldn't mind maybe taking a few questions and joining us at the table. And thank you for really reminding us that when we get to beyond a theoretical model and we really begin to think about how we take a system up to scale, you have to get into the minutia, you have to figure it out, you have to figure out the practicalities of it and how to make it work. And we really appreciate you all are on the cutting edge of doing that and showing us that it can be done, but it really takes time and thoughtfulness to think it through. So let's open it up for some questions. We've got, there's also one there. We've got some time for that. So questions for Commissioner Chen and Dr. Hester about what they're doing in Vermont and what the lessons are. Yes, Joe? We'll bring you a microphone.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. This was really fascinating. I'd love to see us do it in Massachusetts. My question is about the commercial payers. How do you mandate them to participate, and how is life different for them?
Well, it was a very interesting conversation in terms of creating the all-payer system for the blueprint. The legislature initially said, let's let the payers encourage had passed legislation encouraging the payers to collaborate with one another, and gave them a year to do that. And the upshot of the year is that they came close, but they didn't quite come to closure on it. So there was actually a legislative mandate passed requiring the insurers, commercial insurers, to participate in the all-payer system. So it was a legislative mandate. I think at some point there was actually some language that said that they shall voluntarily collaborate.
Right. And the only thing I'd add is that so certainly with some of our hopes is if you build it and do it right, they'll come. And to the extent that the payers actually participated in this, in adding funds to this, Medicare also, as part of one of the, have decided to pony up also. So before the state was actually paying for the Medicare part of the population. So it's our hope that whether it be Massachusetts or the federal government, if we do it right, people will see the value in it and contribute.
Yeah, the payer's contribution for the medical home is actually less than they were spending on their remote disease management programs. So the value proposition to the payers was, if this works, then they can substitute something which actually manages care more effectively because it's locally based, and dispense with these more remote programs that they found are not as effective.
Can I just ask as a follow-up to that question? Under single payer, do the private insurers continue to exist, and do they continue to make money? Do they make a profit? Is it just channeled through a single source, but they're still there?
So I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that's not entirely decided at this point. And Dr. Shao's third option was he said, well, you can use a private company actually to be a third-party administrator. So we don't have a lot of insurance companies in Vermont. I mean, that's really we have the Blue Cross Blue Shield it's nonprofit. It's really the one large Vermont-based insurer. We have MVP, for which Dr. Hester worked, that has again another nonprofit, and then we have Cigna that insures the state employees and some other large groups. I think the challenge is, I think the Blues would love to be that third-party administrator, and then maybe a little bit more. And we're not sure what's going to happen. There aren't other ones that will leave because there aren't many.
So can I maybe just ask a follow-up? So is it, if let's say theoretically that the Blues did assume that role, would they take over Medicaid administration too? Or
they might be paying the claims, and certainly there are certain Medicaid waiver and programs where they were done through commercial payers.
Oh, fascinating. Thank you. Next question.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Canadian, so I'm kind of familiar with the single payer system. I have a question about moral hazard and the control of supply in a single payer system where, you know, there's still the third party payment system. There's a lot of issues with, you know, gatekeepers and whether or not you need referrals to go see specialists and all of that stuff. And as we all know from Fox News, apparently people are dying because supply is controlled in Canada, which is not entirely true. Do you guys have new or novel ideas of how you would do that in Vermont, or do you have any, are people worried about that happening? Are people talking about that?
I certainly think when we were actually discussing the legislation and the legislature was considering it, there was discussion about the Canadian system and the fact that all the Canadians are dying on the street. But again, they're not, and we know that. I think that getting away from a gatekeeper model and going more toward a shared savings model is one of the ways that you can kind of get around that. I think, again, changing the focus of a provider or a hospital away from more procedures and that volume-based system to one that's more value-based really changes that a lot. And in the end, we know that Americans and Vermonters are not going to tolerate, you know, overt rationing. It just wouldn't happen, and that's why none of us expect that cost curve is going to go that way. That we're just trying to reduce the rate of growth, and I certainly think that we spend an adequate amount of that, certainly over adequate amount to provide virtually everything that everybody needs.
Yeah, the other response to that is the performance that we're looking for is not just focusing on total cost, it's looking at those other two elements of the triple aim. So it's a very different approach which tries to build in the safeguards to make sure that you're not skidding on care or abusing the population-based payment system. And I think that we do have the metrics, we do have the approaches to put appropriate safeguards in place that will happen.
Oops.
There we go. I have a lot of
Well, you Brian's got one.
So one of the articles that I teach the class portion of this was an article this summer about the governor of Vermont sort of demurring off of really articulating how this thing was going to be funded. So this gets to the politics of the issue. And the things that are sort of delayed, right, as you said, are pretty big things. How is this thing going to actually be funded, and how perception is going to be managed, which I thought you covered really well about. How's the public going to view this? What's your sense of, you know, the politics of this as you try and roll it out? I mean, how do you think, if we were to do this for the rest of the country, what are the key things you think have to be managed in terms of public perception and being able to have politicians be willing, you know, to be able to address the real hard questions?
Well, I think one of the reasons that it's been delayed is that we initially wanted to move faster and try to get the waiver in 2014 or 15, but again, because of the makeup of Congress, there was no way that we were going to get that waiver. So there's really no reason to, in our, you know, from a political sense, to lay out something 4 years in advance. So you want to, you know, you want to have that debate once. You want to have that plan presented once and have them act on it, and not to drag it on year after year after year, because as you know, as Dr. Hester said, that's a lot of money. Again, and a way in terms of the public is really the education is that we are indeed already spending this. But again, understanding there's going to be winners and losers.
Thanks.